Colleagues, Canadian Forces just lost a number of members. We're not quite sure of the exactly. I just wonder whether we could stand for a moment and remember what they do for us and the risks that they take, and then we'll resume our meeting. Thank you. We have with us this afternoon the external monitor. We have a number of time challenges. And the first time challenge I need guidance on is, do we run till 5:30 and then, or do we run past 5:30? 5:30? 5:30 it is. Okay. Second, I need, it's been suggested to me by Ms. Normandine that she would like to hear from Madame Therian for 10 minutes as opposed to 5 minutes. If I do that, then we'll have to necessarily cut back on members' time. Okay. No, just Ms. Norman. I haven't actually asked. Yeah. You're good? 5 minutes is good? Then consider that withdrawn. So with that, we'll ask you to start your 5-minute opening statement, and oh goodness, if we run an hour, that takes us to 5:15. We've just agreed to do an in-camera meeting for 15 minutes, and then we'll have to. I think we're going to have to cut this back till 5 o'clock. Is that all right? Because we do have a half an hour of business. It's the last time we're going to meet, and we do have a lot of work. Okay? So we'll run this meeting till 5 o'clock, and I appreciate your patience, Madame Therian. We look forward to your opening statement for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair and members, for the invitation to appear before this committee. Last October, I was appointed as external monitor pursuant to recommendation 48 of the report from the Independent External Comprehensive Review, which was completed, as you know, by former Justice Arbour. And it was made public last year, that report. My mandate is to provide advice and to report on the implementation by DND and the CAF of accepted recommendations from Justice Arbour's report, as well as recommendations from other external reports. In accordance with the recommendation, I am to provide the Minister with a biannual status report. My first report was issued a few weeks ago, and it contains my observations from November to the end of April 2023, addressing the progress on about half of Justice Arbour's recommendations. I will admit that the time frame for a first public report made for an intensive learning curve. That said, I made myself very present in the lives of many people at D&D CAF, and they were generous with their time. Aux nombreux leaders supérieurs de l'organisation.
I have met with many senior leaders in the organization. To them, I pose the question, what have you been doing to address the spirit and intent of the recommendations for which you are responsible, and how is any of it different this time? I believe that the revelations regarding senior leaders in 2021 represented a galvanizing moment. There is a strong will to make things better in the DND Canadian Armed Forces. The organization is fully aware that it needs to maintain a work environment that will attract and retain the best candidates if the armed forces is to remain a viable professional body. As I said in my first report, I've seen definite progress in addressing a number of Justice Arbour's recommendations. Notwithstanding these achievements and the existing commitment, DND-CAF needs to be more strategic in its approach. At present, National Defence is responding to hundreds of recommendations relating to culture from a number of external sources. The individual recommendations cover a broad set of systems and practices belonging to different organizations within DND-CAF. Some are complementary, but some are not. I was explaining that there is no overall framework enabling DND-CAF to prioritize and more effectively coordinate its efforts horizontally. There has been work to prioritize individual recommendations, and that is important, but the exercise was conducted without benefit of an overall scheme that would drive organizational effort. That is key to help ensure that not only are individual recommendations actioned, but that they collectively create the positive culture change that DND-CAF seeks.
Nations that this government has accepted need to be rationalized according to established principles, criteria, themes, so that those recommendations most likely to have the biggest impact on culture change remain the primary focus. And I have recently learned that this is happening. The DND-CAF has consulted broadly, both internally and externally, on the subject of sexual misconduct. It also has readily available information from many stakeholders. Never has it been so informed as to what it needs to do and the organizational levers that it needs to focus on. I am now working to ensure that my next report will provide a further update on the recommendations that were addressed in my first report, but will then also contain the remainder of the recommendations, such as recruitment, promotions, complaints and grievances, and the policy framework surrounding this area. I also plan to review the data being used and the implementation of the provisions of the Declaration of Victims' Rights, which came into force in June 2022. I thank you for this opportunity and look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Madam Tarian. I should have and didn't read this note about the audio. And it says, this room is equipped with a powerful audio system and feedback events can occur. These can be extremely harmful to interpreters and cause injuries. Most common cause is sound feedback is an earpiece worn too close to the microphone. So we therefore ask all participants to exercise a high degree of caution when handling the earpieces, especially when your microphone or your neighbor's microphone is on. So we're all guilty of this, and I don't want to make it any more difficult for interpreters than it already is. So with that, colleagues, we're going to cut back the 6-minute round to 4 minutes. And Ms. Cramp-Newman, 4 minutes, please.
Thank you. Thank you for being here, Ms. Tarian, and I'd like to thank you for all the work that you have been doing in the short amount of time that you've been tasked to do it in. My first question, can you answer who do you report to?
I would have to say to the minister, because I provide her advice. Every month, I provide her with a report, and this report, the public one, goes to her.
And in addition to the minister, do you report additionally to the Parliament, to Cabinet, or is it just the minister?
Minister.
Okay. And how often are you in contact with the minister?
Oh, on average, once a month.
Okay. At any point during its development, apart from the minister who you've mentioned you directly report to, has any other minister or any other staff from any other minister's offices, including the PMO, formally or informally been in contact with you via phone or in person or email to discuss any of the content?
No.
Okay. Further, you've noted in your report that the agenda is being driven by availability of resources and capacity issues. Does the CAF have the capability required to implement all of the recommendations?
I believe they have the capability. They currently, I would suggest, have the will, but I do believe that they have to prioritize, because the fact is that there's not unlimited resources, there's not unlimited time, and they are dealing with hundreds of recommendations from external sources about culture change. So they've got a lot on their plate, They have to come up with this framework of how they're going to move forward.
Further, the CDS has characterized our retention and recruitment crisis. Do you believe the progress made to date has had any impact on the recruitment or retention rates of the Canadian Armed Forces?
Apparently, the numbers are looking good in terms of new recruits. I know that there's a lot of effort going into that because clearly they need warm bodies to be able to conduct their work. There's a lot of emphasis on that aspect of what they're trying to do.
Okay. And do you feel that the Canadian Armed Forces and Department of National Defence have effectively implemented all or even a majority of the recommendations made by Madame Amber?
I can't say that it's all or many, quite a few. The thing is, there are many that will never be actually closed off or completely met because they'll be ongoing for a long time. Like, for example, can I give you an example?
Certainly.
Recently, it was announced that there's a launch of a program to provide legal assistance to people who've been affected by sexual misconduct. That's the first phase. There's going to be quite a few sort of incremental phases to that. So that's a long-term thing. Can I say it's completely done? In theory, it is, but it's good to keep that window open.
So when the report was released, Minister Anand immediately accepted the 17 recommendations. These are people's lives, and people have legitimate concerns that need to be addressed, and reports are important, but action is needed.
Yep.
Would you suggest that 17, those full 17, are implemented or have full intentions to be implemented?
They're very close to being all implemented, and those that aren't completed it's imminent in a lot of cases. Yeah.
Do you believe a change in minister or political will would make it possible to implement the recommendations finally?
I have to say that the minister is very committed to this, and I can't see that she could be any more committed and what it would change. It's that the department takes a certain amount of time to complete the tasks that are required.
Thank you, Ms. Graham-Newman. Mr. Fisher, 4 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you very much for being here, for taking on this job, and for, you used the term the learning curve, and you threw yourself into the job. I remember when I was first elected as a member of Parliament, when I was asked, I said it's like drinking from a water hose, a fire hose, and I did the same thing. I threw myself right into the job. Your report focuses on 3 major themes: prevention, support to affected persons, and input and oversight. Can you elaborate a bit? Now, you only had 5 minutes at the start, but can you elaborate a bit and inform the committee about the progress made on all 3 of these themes?
Well, as pointed out in the report, I believe that there's been a lot of activity, and I chose those themes because, for me, they were logical. If you can prevent these instances from happening in the first place, as opposed to dealing with them after the fact, that's always a good thing. And so I list a few items in there that I believe fall into that prevention category. Support to victims is crucial, clearly, and that has come a long way. The SMSRC, the center that is there to support victims, they've really expanded their services. I hope that people out there know that they exist. That's always sometimes the issue. And in terms of external input and oversight, that was one of the themes of Madame Arbour, and I believe she's right. There needs to be a lot of external input into how the military does things.
At the end of your, in the conclusion part of your report, you emphasized the need for a strategic plan to coordinate the implementation of the recommendations. Can you tell me how you feel that's going and whether you feel like you have the support for your work?
I had been talking about the need for a strategic framework for about a month before the report was made public, because it was becoming obviously more and more clear to me that without that, there's going to be a lot of activity, but it was not necessarily going to be focused on the recommendations that are the most critical. I've been told that now they are working on such a framework. And there's a lot of support for it, actually.
So you feel that from all you've seen so far, you feel like this is something that your work is going to be taken seriously by the government and by the Minister of National Defence?
So far, I have to say yes.
Okay. What about work that's been done before you were named in fall of 2022, when you came into the position and you were, thrown into that learning curve? Did you see that things were set up to be taken seriously by government, by the minister as well?
They had already set up the division within the armed forces, the sort of the people, the umbrella that is now responsible for culture and professional conduct. So that's from 2021. They also later that year established, or early the next year, the what's called the ECRIC, which is the committee that is set up to ensure implementation of external reports.
Okay.
So those
That's all
are
I
two
got.
things.
Thank you.
Madame Normandin, for 4 minutes.
Madame Normandin, 4 minutes, please. Thank you, Ms. Terrien, for your work and being here today. Some recommendations have been around for a long time, such as transferring complaints and cases to the civil justice system. Some adjustments may have to be made. I would like to know how that's going. Have there been obstacles that mean we might have to review the recommendations? Some cases are more complex. Some military personnel are based in one place where an offence is committed or an allegation is made and they reside actually elsewhere. Well, it's not up to me to question the intent of recommendations, but yes, we have been hearing of a number of obstacles, and some are wondering whether that is really what is best for victims. Recently, the department and the armed forces, DND-CAF, initiated a discussion with all partners provincially and territorially. In those discussions, we will be talking about potential obstacles and how we will overcome them as best we can. If I've understood correctly, the other useful thing will be taking lessons, drawing lessons from cases that have already been transferred. And it's there, I think, that we'll see exactly what works as it should and what doesn't. Sometimes, one person's in one province, the other in a different province, so it doesn't work as well in practice as it does in theory. I think these consultations will help with that. If we see that there are obstacles to the application of some recommendations, what could be done? How could those recommendations be reviewed? Do we bring Justice Arbour back into the loop, or do we simply move ahead as best we can? Well, yes, we'll be taking it one step at a time. That recommendation was accepted, so we move ahead with it, but it's very important as we move forward to learn what adjustments need to be made. I have a military college in my riding, so I'd like to hear you on the study that was to be carried out on training military outside those colleges in some cases. What are the criteria to assess the training? Some were discussing a comparative analysis between the two colleges in question, and by making changes, we don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. Yes, there will be an assessment, and it's quite true. I've been to both colleges, and there's a significant difference. When I visited in March, I believe, the Kingston College was just looking into what they could take from Saint-Jean, which would be good for them. It would also be important to do this. Has some reflection been carried out? Has there been a process of reflection? It's coming up, and there will soon be more details available. Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here today. So to build off of a past question, you said, of course, that you report directly to the minister. One of the key findings, of course, was that externality to investigate such things. The ombudsman himself for defense has said that he must be able to report outside of the minister. Do you truly feel that you can be external when you only report to the minister?
I actually do, because even though we do discuss things, she's made it abundantly clear that I am to do what I am to do on my own. And I have never felt any constraint whatsoever, truly.
Okay.
And what I say in my reports to her on a monthly basis are my thoughts only. What I said in here is what I had to say.
Okay. So when Justice O'Bour came to the committee, she was very concerned and frustrated, of course, that it didn't look like any progress would be made on the duty to report, for example. There's a working group. The Chief of Defence Staff himself said, I've signed off on these things. That hasn't been moved forward on. In terms of that externality, in terms of that pressure that I guess you're supposed to put on the ministry, on the department, were you given any access to the deliberations internally for example, on what's happening on the duty to
I keep asking
report?
on a regular basis, what's going on, where is this at, and what's the delay? And there's a briefing note to discuss the risks that are. There's a lot of discussion about the risks, and so that takes a certain amount of time. Because when you change a major policy, that one in particular.
Is that why it wasn't included in your report? Just because you haven't gotten there yet?
It's just not there, but it is truly imminent, that one.
Truly imminent.
Yep.
Well, I mean, to be perfectly honest, it's been called for a very, very long time.
Oh, since 2018,
Yes.
the Auditor General was the first one to bring it up. Back
The
then,
delay could possibly be, other than the fact that it
It's-
seems so significant, but is there any other delay that you know of or you've been made aware of?
There's a lot of consultation that takes place in that organization. And it leads to delays. And it seems to just go on and on, the conversation. And some decision. That's why the framework is important, because it will say, these we have to move on faster than what's happening.
So you believe wholeheartedly that by the time you're ready for that second update, that it will be ready?
I am.
Okay.
I'm confident.
And so you've seen that? Okay. All right. So in terms of that transparency, I mean, there was a story in the Ottawa Citizen about an access to information request. Information was not shared by the military, and yet a reporter was given access to information. And it was almost seemed like there was a disconnect between the department and what was being shared out, I guess, by an external source in the form of an ATIP. So in terms of your externality, again, and that transparency, are there any concerns around that in terms of what you're being allowed access to within
Within
that
the
defense?
department?
Yes.
Oh, I truly feel that whatever I ask for, I'm getting. And I do have assistance with somebody who knows the department inside and out. And she's very good at seeking information on my behalf.
Thank you, Ms. Madsen. Colleagues, we've made some decent time, so instead of a 3-minute round, I think we'll go to 4 minutes. So 4, 4, 2, 2, 4, 4. Mr. Bazan, 4 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and Madam Theron, thank you for taking on this role. Thank you for the work you did as in the Auditor General's office before that and the work that you did. Just to be clear, are you staffed at all and able to do your job? How many people are assigned to you?
2.
Okay, and they're out of the Department of National Defense?
Nope. My EA is within what is called the Corporate Secretariat, which is sort of a neutral knob in the middle of between D&D and the CAF. And the person who is helping me with the actual work she was in internal audit, and she assisted Madame Arbour and Madame Deschamps. and that's why she was the perfect choice for this.
Okay. And so with this report, you said that you report directly to the minister. Did the minister's office at all peruse this report before it was released publicly, or were you able to release it publicly without them putting?
Well, I submitted to
any
her
edits?
at one point. She reviews it, and it becomes public, but she did not change anything or
Okay,
ask for any
perfect.
changes.
Great. You mentioned the Deschamps report. Are you following any of those recommendations through to see whether or not they came to fruition? We know that Minister Annan's predecessor let it collect dust for several years without ever looking at it.
Within my scope, I have the Arbour report, but anything going back to starting from Deschamps that talks about sexual misconduct, I'm including.
Do you believe that if that Deschamps report had been acted upon back in 2016, 2017, that we wouldn't be in the mess that we got into at the end of 2019, 2020?
You know, as somebody pointed out recently, even if all the recommendations are fully implemented, will that fix everything? We don't know.
In your report, you talk about some of the legislative changes that are required and everything from duty to report. You also talk about the probationary period for new recruits, making use of, until that happens, the regular enrollment release. Do you think there's a due process in those for people who are getting released under their auspices to make sure that their jurisprudence is respected? And secondly have you recommended to the minister that they bring forward the appropriate legislative changes or regulatory changes that are needed to implement all these recommendations?
I have been asking for the plan for legislative changes for this year and have seen various versions. On there are, for example, recommendation 5 is an important one. There are other ones on there. The probation I've asked about. There's currently a discussion as to whether when they will seek legislative change on that, because what they're suggesting is that they can go at it from other ways that are less complicated. So in other words, do we absolutely need legislative change to be able to accomplish what the recommendation suggests?
Does that include recommendation number 5 to remove sexual offenses under the criminal code and outside of the National Defense Act?
No.
Okay. When we look at the referral of sexual offenses to the provincial court system and to municipal and provincial policing agencies, you've talked that there's 90-plus cases referred over. Have you been talking to the provincial ministers and or provincial policing associations to see whether or not they have the court and police resources to take on these extra cases from national defense?
I've not had direct conversations with those groups, no.
Do you think that's important to have to ensure that we have the capacity to deal with any of these that are
That
referred to national
consultation
defense?
paper that they are expecting in June, the results of, they've canvassed all of those people that you've talked about, and that's part of the issue is the resourcing, and that comes in the next little while, and that will be the starting point.
And you'll have eyes on that and to make sure.
Thank you, Mr.
Okay,
President.
thanks.
Mr. Souza, 4 minutes.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for your testimony. Appreciate what you have to say and the report you produced, and more importantly, the notion of trying to change the culture to try to be more effective and proper treatment. And if I just want to sort of build on some of the work, some of the questions that was just made, and in Section 1 of the prevention, where we talk about prevention, you highlight the strong commitment to operationalize CAF ethics and values with regard to creating a safe and inclusive workplace and inculcating those values into the next generation of military personnel, unquote. And that this will be instrumental, you say, in the shift towards a safer workplace. So can you elaborate on how these good faith efforts among senior leadership and the continuation of a productive relationship with departmental officials will support the implementation of your report recommendations, and what part of DND and CAF, what part they're doing good, and what other parts can the defense team learn from this?
Well, hopefully this answers your question. As I stated in the report, there's a lot of activity. Everybody has been tasked with some of these recommendations from the Arbour report, from the Fish report that was released the year prior. There's also a minister's panel on systemic racism. The Hyder-Beatty class action, a lot of recommendations have come out of that. A lot of activity, a lot of consultation, a lot of movement. but it needs to be thought through so that you have a coherent approach going ahead. Because in the end, we could say those 10 recommendations, yes, done, but did it really do what it was supposed to do? So they have to think through how to prioritize and coordinate better.
In her report, Madame Arbor, right, she noted that, and she says the external monitoring plays a key role in holding those relevant stakeholders to account, including the defense team of leadership, the leadership, right? And in your role, and certainly previously as a member of the Auditor General's office, you should be able to help ensure that the senior leadership then follows through on those meaningful and lasting cultural change in the armed forces. Can you do that? Are you part of that?
Well, I tell you, this report, they know it's coming, right? Even in December, when there was an update to Parliament, and Madame Arbour was present, and the minister and so on, they are already talking about the fact that, okay, end of April, the external monitor produces that report that says yay or nay. And so, and they know that there's another one coming up in another 5 months. That makes a difference. It's monitoring. It really is monitoring. And I believe it's making a difference that way. Will it forever? Maybe not. Maybe the novelty will wear off after a while. And
I'm encouraged by the steps that the minister is taking. Obviously, she's been a huge advocate for consumer protection, a number of measures in her past life, and certainly on this issue, she's very clear as to what she would like to see happen. Are you encouraged that there is leadership coming from the top and that it will resonate through?
there's definitely leadership from the top and sincere willingness, but the devil's in the details. And that's what we're working through these recommendations, is doing the thing that is expected to really change. There are organizational levers that are very important when you want to change culture. And are they focusing on those? Yes, because they're focusing on the recommendations. But some of those have to happen sooner rather than later.
Thank you, Mr. Souza. Madame Normandine, 2 minutes, s'il vous plaît.
Ms. Normandine, 2 minutes. I'd like to come back to something you said. I heard you saying that some people were saying that some recommendations were not the most appropriate to help them. For example, cases being transferred to the civilian justice system. In your study, with what you've learned, do you think it should be advisable not just to look at putting in place the recommendations, but also taking a good look at how effective a recommendation would be in practice? Is this part of what you're doing? I always put the following question. How do you know that you've succeeded in accomplishing what you were asked to do? It's one thing to implement a recommendation to the letter, but is it actually going to achieve the intended purpose? Answers most likely will vary. With the transfers, for example, we'll have to wait until a certain number have been transferred before we can actually see whether it's going reasonably well. Thank you. And should we have regular reviews of how effective measures are? Once these recommendations are put in place, should we review them regularly to see whether they're effective? I believe that should be part of any sound management process in any department. They should be asking, what are we going to use? What data are we going to use? What approach are we going to use? And that should also be accompanied by an assessment of how effective things are, and that should be done regularly.
So back on to that transfer of criminal sexual offense cases to the civilian system, Justice Arbour was very, very clear that as long as they're allowed to prolong in concurrent jurisdiction, there will be this bouncing back and forth. The idea was that the government needed to bring forward legislation, and yet that's been delayed, although Arbor was very, very clear. Did you see conversations and speak about those conversations in terms of that legislation coming forward quickly?
It's being definitely discussed and brought forward. I mean, it's
But you
just
don't have a
matter-
timeline necessarily?
There are two issues. There's the application of the recommendation within Canada and external to Canada. And so I think there are two different timelines for that.
Okay. And again, in your next report, potentially there will be another timeline update on that?
There should be, because I would hope that the department has been able to clearly bring some legislative modifications forward.
Okay. I just wanted to ask quickly as well, a lot of folks who survived through military sexual trauma were really disappointed in seeing the piece about the independent legal assistance program. They were happy to see that there was coverage, and yet they were shocked to see that it wasn't covered for the Human Rights Tribunal, which a lot of these cases go to. Are you seeing any progress on that, or any concerns from your perspective?
I'm seeing progress on that. There's constant. The whole complaints and grievance process is being radicalized and that's not a good term, radically transformed. And the link up with CHRC is very important in all that. And there's been a lot of meetings to engage that.
And they've shown that the concern for...
Thank you, Ms. Madsen. 4 minutes, Ms. Gallant.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In the report, it says that the right fit candidates, including increasing diversity, to be posted even if there's no direct correlation with the rank or occupation of the position available. And that refers to the staff of the Canadian Forces Leadership and Recruitment School. Does that sort of policy that right fit is more important than the actual ability to other parts of the military, or is it just the staff school?
This seems to be a relatively new practice. They have clearly understood the message from Madame Arbour that your instructors have to be top-notch. You can't just be sending people there who you don't really know where to put. They have to be the people who can really talk about the right character and so on. And so I said, well, what are you doing about this? They said, well, we're trying to ensure that the right people are sent. And this is where they said, we have even gone to the point of being flexible enough that if it's not the right rank necessarily, but we know it's the right person, we will make arrangements to make it work.
Even though it's not necessarily the occupation of the person who's teaching either. How are you tracking the uptake of the Arbor recommendations amongst the supervisors of young female reservists?
I'm not directly involved in that.
So it's just not being done. They were left out then.
The reservists?
Yes, the young female recruits, particularly in the reservist end.
They may be captured in certain areas that I would be looking at, but per se, it's the people who are going through the regular force as opposed to reserve.
Okay, so with respect to Arbor's suggestion that the military colleges update their culture by referring it to an orthodoxy that is incompatible with today's society, how is this being accomplished while preserving the traditions these institutions have passed on to generations of service members?
Sorry, I'm not sure I understand.
Okay, so the Arbor suggested that they have to update their culture because the orthodoxy of the culture is incompatible with today's society. How is this being accomplished while preserving the traditions and institutions that have been passed on for generations?
That's why there is an external panel that will review the two colleges to establish what's going right and not so right there.
So how would this probationary period for military candidates enrolled in military colleges impact the retention of the students going in there?
Well, they're two separate things. The idea of the probation is to ensure that you are able to quickly dismiss people who have toxic views or behaviors. Retention is a whole other set of efforts going on because, of course, the CAF needs to not only attract people but needs to keep them.
That's right.
And so they have to work on that aspect too.
So has any connection been drawn to the implementation of the Arbor recommendations and the highest attrition levels in 15 years of the Canadian Armed Forces?
The CAF regularly looks at why people are leaving, and they analyze that nonstop.
So there are exit interviews done?
There are a lot of surveys being conducted. They want to know why people are leaving. They've really calculated, okay, at X number of years, why are they leaving? Men, women, they constantly look at that information.
Thank you, Ms. Gallant. Mr. May, final 4 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Madam Tarian, thank you so much for joining us today. Your report notes that your next report will focus on several areas from the IECR that you have not yet reported on, including recruitment, complaints and grievances, among others. Can you inform this committee about what's happening between now and the next status report in October with regard to these areas?
Just to be clear, it's not that I haven't done any work on those areas yet. There have been a lot of meetings, a lot of discussions on complaints and grievances, on recruitment and retention, on promotions, but I wanted to do a more thorough look before I commented on those. And that's what we're doing now. We're deep diving into all these things, and along with a few other things like the Declaration of Victims' Rights. That's not something that comes up in any of the, well, I shouldn't say more, former Justice Fish brought it up. And it's something that became in force only in June 2022. So around the same time that the Arbor report was released. So we're doing the rest of the Arbor report, but also a few other aspects.
So with the complexity of all of these recommendations and all of the different steps, as you say, can you suggest how we can better communicate the important steps towards culture change that the government is making at this point?
I really think it's one of the points I make in the opening statement is that never has this organization been so informed as to what it needs to do. All of these recommendations, they've consulted internally a lot, quite intensively, but also externally. They know what they have to do. If they want to do this, they know what they need to do, but they need to plan it out. Know which ones are the most critical ones for culture change and get on with those. Make sure the resources are attached to that. If committee members have ideas as to which ones are more critical, I suppose that's always a good idea to relate that information.
So just to move on quickly, the CPCC was created in the spring of 2021 to unify and integrate all the associated culture change activities across DND and CAF, and you've talked about them in your report with regards to education and training. In your opinion, can the CPCC help in the issue around the strategic planning outlined in the conclusion of your report?
Yes, they can.
Okay.
Yes, they're fully qualified.
Excellent. And maybe elaborate a little bit about why they're influential.
Because they are the functional authority now on culture change and professional conduct. So it's their job. At the same time, there are all these other organizations within the larger department that have things to say about it. But somebody has to lay out a plan.
And Very quickly, can you tell us who, in your opinion, which senior leader within the CAF should be responsible for developing that strategic plan?
I believe that CPCC is currently drafting it, and that it will go straight up to the top.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And with that, it brings our second round of questioning to a close. On behalf of the committee and Madam Tarian, I wanted to thank you. I particularly wanted to thank you for your flexibility in time constraints, but you've been around this place for quite a while, and you appreciate that things don't always work according to clocks. So I anticipate that we will see you again, possibly around the release of your second report. With that, again, thank you. And colleagues, we can go two ways here. We can suspend and go in camera, or we can, well, put it this way, we have three things to talk about. We have the travel, we have how to incorporate the Veterans Affairs evidence, and have to pass the budget for the procurement study. So I can do two out of three things in public. The third, maybe not. The analysts tell me that they feel that they can incorporate the 27 pages of evidence from that's available into their draft report. If they say they can do it, then we don't have to go in camera and save a little time.
For sure, right?
What's that?
Didn't you say there was one of the three? That
We can discuss the travel in public, and we can discuss the budget in travel in public.
Discussing the report in public?
No, we can't discuss the report in public.
No.
So let's just go in camera.
I would suggest camera.
Okay, you're good to go in camera? Okay, with that, we suspend, and in camera it is.
You're right, James.
Thank you.